This is episode 3 of Trading Bot Sessions, where we talk with traders who have built automated trading strategies and trade everything from stocks and options to futures and crypto. In this session, I speak with Kurtis Bulock, a PineScript developer offering professional services for building TradingView strategies. We cover his background in trading Forex, learning PineScript, and ultimately how he gained deep experience in some of the more complex ways of developing a robust trading strategy. I trust you'll enjoy this episode of Trading Bot Sessions with Kurtis. Well, thanks, Kurtis, for joining us here on the show. I just want to know right off the bat, if you could just tell us a little bit about yourself and your background and really how you got started with algo trading.
Yeah, so my name's Curtis, and I started trading in general, just at an internship I was part of in college. I worked graveyard overnight, and I had my computer with me, and I didn't have a whole lot to do. So I just started learning. I started reading. I went through, online courses, or was it the Baby Pips course, which tends to be really popular, and just looking at charts. And I've always been very analytical minded, so it always interested me. I felt there was a lot more to what was just on the screen, and that's where I started learning about trading in general. As for automating it, on my trading journey, I realized I don't have time for this. I don't have time to sit here and manage every single trade I want to take or look at every single chart that's out there. And so I wanted a way to at least have exposure in the market without having to sit at my desk to do it. And so I started learning the PineScript built into TradingView, which is robust and growing more robust by the week. It helped me get a handful of trading strategies live in the market, testing whether they're good or not. That's another story, but just getting in the market and getting it automated so I didn't have to do it and manage it every day. That was where, I wanted to take my learning towards.
What markets did you find yourself trading at first?
At first, it was mostly Forex, so the foreign exchange market, because like I said, I was working graveyard at an internship. Not a whole lot of markets open at that time. Crypto, it wasn't new, but it scared me a little bit just because I've always been a little more risk averse, and I didn't want to try to get my hands dirty with that. So I started with Forex just because the markets were a lot more favorable. You can trade any hour of the day except for weekends. So that's where I started, and I've been a lot more into crypto recently. And I think that's because just a lot of the clients I work with tend to be in that market as well. So I've had to build a lot of tools for that market.
So I definitely want to circle back to the time that you spent developing PineScript strategies for other clients. But before we get there, can you tell us a little bit about the types of strategies that you originally created in Forex? Were they technical in nature, or were you pulling in economic data of any kind?
Most of what I build is based on pure technical analysis. It's using indicators and other tools that measure the market, and then using those as signals or identifiers to enter and exit the market. One of the first people I listened to when I started to try to get serious there's this guy that calls his stuff No Nonsense Forex. I don't know if you've heard of it. He talks about his method of trading, which is very technical, very analytical, very automatic. He uses a series of indicators to measure the market, and every day trades on the daily time frame. Every day at the end of the day, he looks at the chart, makes a trade, doesn't make a trade, and then repeats every day. So he spends very little time on the screen and a lot of time doing what he wants to do, which says it works for him. So that's kind of where I got my first hands-on experience with automating things, because it was ripe to automate. This technical analysis stuff, if you can program it right, it's really easy to automate it, because it's just a program compared to, like, say, price action. A lot of price action is a little subjective. Things like support and resistance, or highs and lows. Like, is this one a high, or do you have to wait until the next candle, or stuff like that? So price action is a lot harder to automate. So that's why I started with this. His method really intrigued me. I thought it was really interesting. He went into a lot of depth on how he makes it work. And so I started with that, learned all of his stuff, and then I wanted to automate what he did. So I've gone away from that a little bit. Honestly, these days, I hardly have time for my own trading, just with all the work I do for other people. It keeps me plenty busy. But that's where I started. That's where I would say I got serious with my trading.
Can you tell us what was the type of approach that you had learned from No Nonsense Forex?
Yeah. So in general, it was about, I believe it was like 4 indicators, more or less. And it was all, you can add more, lose some. But in general, you had some sort of baseline that would filter out the direction of the trend. It was trend-based trading. So use some sort of like moving average or some sort of channel or something that would differentiate long market versus short market. And then on top of that, you would have two confirmation indicators, something like a MACD, when the MACD lines cross over, that would be a confirmation. Or what's another one, like a Bollinger Band. If the price exit goes outside the Bollinger Band, then that would be a confirmation. So two confirmation indicators that work together to filter out like noise in the trend. And then lastly, you would have a volume indicator, something to only get you in the market when things are actually moving. So like volume or volatility. If volume or volatility was too low, it would just not trade anything. And so you put all those pieces together and it gives you a pretty good system. As for what the actual pieces are, there's infinite combinations. You just have to find one that works for you. Ever since I started automating that, I've adjusted my trading. I usually don't use more than like 3 indicators at a time, but very similar fashion, something that'll filter trend, something that'll confirm my entry, and then something that'll confirm the volume and volatility.
So I imagine then, with having a bit of a background in understanding an approach through Forex, that segued nicely into crypto. Did you discover how this type of strategy or other strategies would apply to crypto on your own, or was there something else that got you into crypto?
I definitely would say I kind of got into it on my own and just through the work I do, because at first, most of the requests I got for programs were for the crypto market. I got to know how this market works in order to program some of the stuff, because things between markets can vary a lot. So like in futures, you have like contracts, you're buying like one contract. You can't buy a partial contract. Whereas in Forex, you're buying like lots. So you have like a lot of, 100,000 or 200,000. And then in crypto, you're buying like units of a coin, but you can buy partial units. So it kind of changes. And I realized that in order to get the best out of my strategies and write the best code that actually works for different markets, I needed to know those differences and how those differences play out when you're actually trading.
I guess now's a perfect time to ask, can you tell us a little bit about the company that you started and what kind of services you offer in this space?
Yeah. So my company is called Capital Coders LLC. I started programming strategies for people August of last year. So I've been doing it a little over a year now, and it's been going really well. I enjoy it. It's been a interesting 12 months. I've learned a ton, and I've spent a lot of time doing it. My fiance hates me because my weekends are filled with more work, but we try to get out every once in a while, and I make time outside of my work to live life a little bit. So I primarily focus on building trading strategies. I think it's maybe an underdeveloped part of the TradingView market. There's a lot of indicators out there. There's a lot of like projects that will sell signals and whatnot. But I feel like a trading strategy is the best way to get started, because it's something that can be automated really easily. It's something that can be tested really easily, and it can be very robust if you program it correctly. So that's where I try to spend my focus, and that's mostly what I do. I do build some indicators as well. I'm part of a couple other projects that build and sell indicators for just market analysis. And then I also do some strategy testing as well. So TradingView changed how their backtester works in the last 6 months or so. How I used to test doesn't work anymore, but it's something I want to rebuild out, so that way I can put together a thorough analysis of how a strategy does across a whole market instead of just on like one symbol. And then I also help to automate these strategies. So I am familiar with multiple different platforms and multiple different markets that can automate a strategy directly through TradingView, and it'll connect to your broker and it'll accept signals and start trading. I think that's what you guys do. Yeah.
That's exactly what we do. So let me try to dig into that a little bit. You said that you're working on a way to actually test more than just one symbol at a time through TradingView, or is that something you test in another environment?
So the way I used to do it was I would export everything through Excel, and then I had a template built that would accept like a handful of exports, and then it would combine everything together and show you like if you traded the strategy across these 20 assets or these 20 tickers, this would be your statistics. These are your profit curve. This is your drawdown. This is the time frame. This is how much you're losing. This is how much you're risking, and stuff like that. So it was basically the TradingView backtester, but a lot built out to fit more than just one ticker, and it was all done in Excel. Unfortunately, TradingView changed the layout of their exports. So whenever I export it, it breaks my template, and now I gotta fix the template to adjust to what TradingView changed, and I just haven't gotten around to it yet.
That's fascinating though, because that is a limitation at the moment with TradingView. In order to test your strategy on multiple markets, at least for me, I have a watch list I've created with lots of different types of assets in different markets that I want to test this on. And then I'll test different timeframes as well, just by clicking through each one manually. But if I'm understanding what you just said correctly, you're downloading the trade entries and exits from one single asset, which means that you're testing other assets based on time in and time out. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So it's not necessarily translating the actual technical analysis trading signal to other assets. It's just translating the time that the trade was taken and the time the trade was sold on the first asset that was exported.
Yeah, that's correct. So it exports all of the trades and all of the info for the trades, and then it would combine them, into like a single portfolio.
Got it. Okay. Interesting. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about your journey in understanding PineScript and TradingView's backtesting system. What resources did you use to come up to speed on their platform, and where do you find yourself continuing to get educated on their platform?
There's a ton of resources out there for PineScript and TradingView in general. Some of them not so great. Some of them work just fine. Some of them are a lot better than others. But the ones that I gravitated towards were after I finished with my no-nonsense Forex stuff, and I actually wanted to start automating it. That's where I really dug in. I had always learned a little bit beforehand. I always liked the idea of technical analysis because, like I said, it's very rigid. All the rules are, in a tight little box, and it doesn't go outside that box. And so I would always play with the indicators and whatnot on TradingView. I'd put it on my chart, and then you could open the code right there, and you could see how it shows up on the chart. And then I would take that code. It's okay, I kind of want to do something else. What happens if I do this or this? And so I got some base knowledge from that, just playing around with my own stuff, trying to see what systems fit well together. And then after the no nonsense Forex, I had a system that I built, and I said I wanted to automate this. How do I combine all of these pieces into a single program? And then I found a YouTube series by, I think his name was Dylan Grick. He doesn't do PineScript tutorials anymore. Actually, I don't know if he does videos anymore, but he had a whole series where he actually automated the same no-nonsense Forex style trading system. And so it was really handy to take that knowledge I learned from no nonsense and then go through these videos with Dylan Grick on how to actually automate each piece of it. And he even went through automating some of the more nuanced stuff, like how do you do a trailing stop, or how do you move a stop loss to break even and stuff like that. That was really the tricky stuff. And so he went from front to back on a single trading system. I don't know how many videos it was, but it was probably 10 to 20 hours worth of just building out one system. So once I built that system, I could build my own system, just translate everything over. And so that's what I did. I translated my system into that same style and that same automated process. And that one really helped me with the strategy concept. I feel like strategies are a lot of people think they understand trading strategies, but then they really don't. It's more than just entering the market at the right time. You have a lot of things to consider. And that series really helped me grasp that concept.
What you just said there, that a lot of people are missing some of the key components of the strategy process. Maybe you can share with us some of your key findings there.
You'd be surprised at how many people come to me and be like, okay, I want to build a trading strategy. I want to enter the market when this happens. I want to go long when this happens. I want to go short when this happens. I'm like, great, that's a good start. But we also need to know, how are you exiting the market? Do you want a take profit stop loss? That's pretty basic. Do you want a trailing stop loss? Do you want to follow a trend up? You really have to know what you're trading in order to make a lot of these decisions. So exits is something that's definitely ignored a lot, but not only exits, money management and risk in general. Nearly everyone I talk to has no interest at all in managing risk within their trading strategy, or at least they don't ask me about it. And I think that's the best thing that can be automated. If you can automate the risk portion, then you never have to worry about it. You never have to think about how much money am I putting in, how much am I taking out. It's all built in. I know on my trading strategies, when I enter the market, or if I lose, I'm only going to lose 1%. And it's never going to be more. It's never going to be less. I'm never going to revenge trade. I will only ever lose 1% of my trade. And if I win, it'll be like 1 or 3 or 5 or however much my whatever my exit is. And so the risk part of the strategy, no one ever really cares for. And I think that is the easiest part to screw up when you're trading manually, because all it takes is one bad trade to go against you. And, now you're down, 50%, and it's going to take 100% to get back to where you were.
That's right. A couple interesting points there that you pointed out. One is the common oversight on risk management and how important that really is to the improvement of any trading strategy, whether that's discretionary or automated. But the bigger part is the impact that drawdowns have on your portfolio. As we know, in general, with all trading strategies, drawdowns are more costly than gains are beneficial because of what you just said. If you have a 50% drawdown, it takes 100% to gain back. If you have a 90% drawdown, it takes 1,000% to get back to where you started. So obviously we know how asymmetrical that is. Do you find yourself consulting with your clients on some of these topics during the development process of their strategies?
Absolutely. The more serious clients talk about it, and they talk about it like I expect them to. It's a very serious part of it. And I take it very seriously as well. I'm putting together sort of a strategy template that I can use for most clients. Basically, it has all of the strategy components built in. You just need to insert your technical analysis components to basically signal what's going to happen where. And so I'm working on building that out, and that includes risk management. It will measure however far your stop loss is or however far your exit is, and then it will calculate the position size based on that. So that way, whenever you hit your stop loss, you'll only ever lose a certain percentage of your portfolio. And so my more serious clients definitely recognize that. I do find myself talking about that often. That is something that people do appreciate when they understand the importance of it, but a lot of people don't understand that importance. I do try to encourage people to understand that. A lot of times people just don't care.
Yeah, it makes sense. And I'm glad that you're advocating for it because I think that's a key component. How are you accounting for things like commissions and slippage?
That is definitely one of the weakest parts of the TradingView platform. When it comes to things like slippage, a lot of people like to trade on the lower time frame charts, the 1 minute, 5 minute, or even down into the seconds. And every time I have someone talk to me about that, I always try to make sure, hey, you're going to be hitting a lot of slippage here and a lot of commission. The more you trade, the more you're going to pay. That is a hard part to build into the automation. The way I usually account for it is in my forward testing. I usually don't account for it in my back testing too much. There are settings in TradingView that allow you to add in slippage or to add in commission on the strategies. I'll use that as just like a check, but mostly for commission and slippage, I will test it going live with like a demo account or a very small value account, and then see how it differs from my back testing.
So how long, if it were an intraday strategy that you've developed, how much time do you give it before the forward testing is done?
I'll usually trade it for a month or two, and that'll usually give me a good basis of how well I think it does and whether or not it's good enough to go live or to put my own money on. When it comes to jobs for my clients, I usually don't get that far with them. I usually just build a strategy and then let them loose on it, and then it's theirs to go with. I do offer some more in-depth testing if it's something they're interested in, but mostly people just want to build something and then have it go. So I do a lot of that testing from my own stuff, but not so much for clients.
What kind of requests are you getting for strategies these days? Can you share any of the types of requests that you're getting from clients?
I'll tell you what, I get a lot of this. Hey, can you build me a robot that'll make me 5% every day forever? Unfortunately, I have to tell them no. And then I tell them that if anyone else says they can do it for you, you should run away.
Right.
No, the ones I actually take on, I get a lot of requests for some more price action based trading. which I don't enjoy programming as much because you run into a lot more issues with price action. It tends to be more subjective. Things like, what is it? You have like order blocks or imbalances are kind of the keywords that get thrown around a lot. A lot of that stuff is subjective. And so I try to avoid taking those unless I think I can make it work pretty easily. The ones I enjoy programming are the more technical analysis based ones, stuff that use like built-in indicators or stuff that will, you can take the market data, manipulate it in a different way to view the market, and then use that based for entries and exits. Like I said, it's the preferred way to do it because it's really easy to put all of those rules into a box.
If I'm not mistaken, though, I don't think TradingView allows or has access to order book data for those types of strategies. Are you developing strategies outside of TradingView on order book data?
No, so I was saying like order blocks, which I think is another word for like support and resistance stuff.
Ah,
Um,
gotcha.
maybe I'm using the wrong term there, but it's a lot of those more price action based requests are things like support and resistance or supply and demand based. And while you don't have all that information in TradingView, people are doing like a technical analysis of a subjective trading idea, which again just makes it really hard to program.
Here's a perfect example, and you can tell me if you've run into this yet. I'm working on another strategy with another client of ours that specifically relies on Fibonacci retracements to determine stop loss and take profit levels, but also the entry. And as I'm sure you know, Fibonacci levels can be pretty subjective with the most recent low and the most recent high as your pivot points. Have you run into this as well?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So Fibonacci it's a great tool, but as you said, it's used on like pivots. And the thing about pivots in general is you don't know where a pivot happens until it happens. And usually you don't know even well after. It takes a couple bars to figure out, okay, here's where the pivot happened. And so to automate things based on stuff that is either already happened or that you think is going to happen, it's not very clean. Finding highs and lows is just, you need to have a low before you can find a high. That makes sense. You need the market to reverse before you know that that's the top.
The problem I ran into is that I had to make my observations within a limited window. Otherwise, I would be taking the low from the previous trading session or from so far back that it wasn't even considered relevant anymore. So it seems like with PineScript in general, the solution tends to be window-based observations, looking back 50 bars or 100 bars. Are you solving those types of problems in a similar way?
Yeah, that's really, I think, the best way to do it. Like you said, you look at a specific window, but the limit with that is if you're looking back 50 bars, what if the high happened 55 bars ago? So it's like it's not going to be perfect, and that's why I try to avoid it because I guess I like perfection. I like to look at a chart and see this is exactly where I'm going to enter, and I think it's hard to do that when you're constrained with those limitations.
I'm similar in that way where I'm looking for the right approach that has some precision and some consistency to it. However, as we know, markets are completely inconsistent and unreliable from that perspective, so we can never make anything too perfect.
Exactly.
Do you have a recent strategy or PineScript problem you've run into that was particularly challenging that you found a good solution for?
So I'm actually programming a strategy for a client right now. It's a really interesting strategy. It uses the parabolic SAR. So working with multi-time frame data in TradingView is kind of tricky. It doesn't work like you want it to. When you're looking at a higher time frame for data, you can get the most recent information, but when you're working with a strategy, everything executes at the close of the candle. So when you're wanting to take a trade intra candle or within the candle, you have to turn on this feature. It's called calculate on every tick. The issue with that is when you're dealing with trading strategies, that will cause repainting. If, for example, that higher time frame data, let's say it'll confirm your signal and then within the same candle, reverse direction, and then you lose that confirmation. So when you're calculating on every tick, you will get that confirmation to enter the market. Let's say you get a trigger, a buy signal, but then 10 minutes later, that buy signal will disappear because that data on the higher time frame changed. So you run into this problem where either all of your historical data is 1 bar late because it's entering on the bar after where the signal is confirmed, or when you're working live, you get that repainting issue. So I was able to basically build out two different, it's kind of like a historical trading strategy and then a live trading strategy within one program. So that way all the historical bars will calculate based on the data they're getting on that candle. But for the live, you want to wait until the candle close because otherwise you'll get false signals. So I figured out how to separate those two within the same script. So that way you can have a more accurate historical test. But then when running it live, it'll execute correctly. Either you're going to be missing some data in the past historically that might have repainted where you would have gotten a trigger, but then it reversed, or the live candle can be repainted as well. There's a specific variable in TradingView that I've been trying to test out some more. It's called varip or varip. It's basically a variable that will hold information intra-candle where everything else in TradingView doesn't. For example, the issue you run into is when you have a strategy that will execute on every tick. Let's say you get a tick that will trigger your strategy to enter. Theoretically, you can take that variable, and the issue is it won't remember you have an entry until that candle closes. By using this variable, you should be able to assign it to a bar that calculates intra-bar, and then it will remember that you have an entry already in the bar before the candle closes instead of waiting until the candle closes. It's a very confusing concept, and you're right that it trips up nearly everybody because it makes sense to use confluence from like higher time frames for trading. It's a very popular mechanic that people like to use, but it's a harder concept to grasp. So basically, yeah, it'll just remember because your standard variables don't assign values until the bar gets closed. With this, it'll assign it based on every single tick. So it'll remember if something happens from one tick to the next instead of from one candle to the next. So it's a newer thing that TradingView has added. I don't see nearly anyone using it, so I'm not sure how best to use it, but I think it can help with that higher time frame repainting issue.
Definitely seems worth looking at. I appreciate you bringing that up.
Yeah.
If people are interested in reaching out to you to test strategies or to have a strategy developed, where can they find you?
The best way to get a hold of me is through Fiverr. I'm on it daily, hourly, responding to people. I think I just go under my name over there, which is Kurtis Bulock. I'm a level 2 seller over there, trying to get to level 3. I think I need a couple thousand more dollars before I get there. But I have really good reviews. So there's a lot of people, maybe not a lot, but there's a handful of people doing the same thing. Outside of Fiverr, I do help moderate a PineScript Discord, actually, that a lot of beginners or a lot of people come to ask questions and solve problems with their PineScript strategies and indicators. So that's one thing I like to do is help back in the community without charging people. I'm not only here to make money, but I do want people to learn how to use these tools as well. So you can find me on Discord at Kurtis Bu, KurtisBu, number 1421, if you want to reach out on there as well. But Fiverr is probably the best way.
I'll put those links in the show notes as well. Are there any particular types of projects that you're really interested in taking on when it comes to TradingView and PineScript?
I wouldn't say there's anything specific. I always like a challenge, but I do know the limits of PineScript, and I think that's important. There are a lot of people who ask for things that just aren't possible. Like if you could like import data from somewhere else, or if you can use like order books and things like that. So knowing those limitations are important because I can't, it would be a real big challenge because no one can do that. But like I said, I specialize in trading strategies. Those are the ones I really enjoy doing. I've got a really good process put together to build things pretty quickly and turn them around and then automate them and get you trading.
Do you have anyone requesting the ability to convert an existing indicator into a strategy?
Yeah, I get that kind of a lot. A lot of people come to me and they say, hey, I have these list of indicators. I want to build them into a strategy. That's probably my most common request of jobs that I take on. And it's relatively simple to do with the resources I've built and the templates I've put together. So I can just plug everything in and then test it and then make some tweaks to whatever they need. Most people do come to me with just like a handful of indicators.
Going forward in the future, do you plan on expanding beyond PineScript and TradingView? Do you have other platforms or systems you're looking to work on?
Yes, I've been wanting to get into your MT4, MT5 for a while. It's definitely a really popular platform, and I get it. It works really well and it's really robust. The issue is it's not the most user friendly in regards to interface or programming. And it's been something I've wanted to do, but I find that I just keep busy with the work that I have, so it's hard to find the time. I also would be interested in doing more like Python automation. I mostly use like third-party platforms to do the automation process. I've been wanting to do more Python automation. It's less accessible, but I think it's a lot more robust in what you can do when you build your own platform. It's something I want to do, but like I said, I keep plenty busy with the work I have. So whenever I have time, maybe I'll get to it.
Well, this has been great. I appreciate you diving deep on PineScript and TradingView. Anything else listeners should know about you before we take off?
I don't think so. I got it all out there. I appreciate talking to you. I could probably talk for another 3 hours. If if you want to do this again, let me know. We can go deeper.
Absolutely. Well, I appreciate the time.